You're 24 years old, working as a bouncer at a dive bar in Detroit, when a man in an expensive suit walks in and offers you $5,000 cash to let two guys settle a dispute in the alley. No cops, no questions. You pocket the money and look the other way for 10 minutes. That's how it starts. Not with some grand plan or criminal empire fantasy. Just easy cash for pretending you didn't see anything. 3 months later, the same man approaches you again. Except this time, he wants a real space. Somewhere private, somewhere controllable. You know a guy who owns a warehouse near the docks, abandoned meatpacking plant, rusted hooks still hanging from the ceiling. You negotiate a deal. $200 a night, cash, and your buddy doesn't ask what you're doing in there. First fight happens on a Friday. 20 people show up. They bet maybe $3,000 total. You take 10% off the top. It's not life-changing money, but it's more than you make in a week at the bar. Word spreads faster than you expected. By month 2, you're pulling 50 people a night. Construction workers, accountants, off-duty cops. Turns out everyone wants to watch two men try to break each other. The violence is raw and ugly, nothing like the movies. Broken noses, shattered knuckles, blood pooling on concrete. You tell yourself you're just providing a service. These guys want to fight. You're just giving them a place to do it. But running an underground fight club isn't about the fights. It's about everything else. You need to manage the money. Bets flow in faster than you can track them. You hire a guy named Marcus who used to run books for the mob. He's 60, missing 2 fingers, and can calculate odds in his head faster than a computer. He teaches you the golden rule. The house always wins, but never too much. Take too big a cut and people stop showing up. Take too little and you're working for free. Security becomes your biggest headache. You can't exactly call the police if something goes wrong. So you recruit ex-military guys, bouncers from other clubs, anyone who can handle themselves and keep their mouth shut. You pay them well enough that loyalty becomes cheaper than the alternative. Your head of security is a woman named Val, former Marine, who once knocked out a guy twice her size for grabbing her arm. She's terrifying and exactly what you need. The fighters themselves are a different problem entirely. Some are amateurs looking for a thrill. Others are genuinely dangerous. You meet a fighter named Dimitri, who has cauliflower ears and knuckles like concrete. He fights because he's good at it and because the money beats his construction job. You watch him break a man's jaw in under 30 seconds. The crowd roars. You count the cash and try not to think about the ambulance you can't call. Fighters get hurt, badly. You keep a doctor on retainer, a guy who lost his license for prescribing OxyContin to teenagers. He doesn't ask questions and he works fast. Dislocated shoulders, broken ribs, concussions that should send someone to a hospital. He patches them up in a back room while you pay him in cash. You're not running a business anymore. You're running a liability that could explode at any moment. The betting gets serious when the professionals find you. Not street-level gamblers, but real money. A guy in a Rolex shows up and drops 20 grand on a single fight. Then another. Then 10 more just like him. Suddenly you're moving 6 figures a night. You upgrade locations, soundproof the walls, install proper lighting. The warehouse starts looking less like a crime scene and more like an actual venue. But the growth attracts attention. The kind you can't pay off or intimidate. Other organizers want a piece. Street gangs see an opportunity. You're sitting on a gold mine and everyone knows it. One night, 3 guys corner you in the parking lot. They're polite about it. They explain that you're operating in their territory. They suggest a partnership. 50-50 split, or they burn your operation to the ground. You have 72 hours to decide. Walk away and lose everything you built, or dig deeper into a world where partnerships are just preludes to betrayal. You choose the partnership, not because you trust them, but because burning to the ground isn't an option. The 50-50 split lasts exactly 3 weeks before they start testing boundaries. First, they want access to your books. Then they want to approve fighters. Then they want their own guys collecting bets. You realize the partnership was never about sharing. It was about taking over slowly enough that you wouldn't notice until it was too late. So you make a decision that changes everything. You expand fast. You open a second location across town before they can react. Then a third in a neighboring city. You're not building a fight club anymore. You're building a network. Each venue operates independently, but feeds into the same system. Fighters rotate between locations. High rollers get VIP access to whichever event suits them. You're franchising violence, and it's working. The money becomes absurd. You're clearing $500,000 monthly across all locations. You buy a house you never sleep in. You drive a car that costs more than your parents made in a decade. But the lifestyle isn't what you imagined. You can't tell anyone what you actually do. Friends from college think you're in event management. Your family thinks you run nightclubs. You're living two lives, and the real one is eating you alive. The fighters start recognizing you, some with respect, others with resentment. A guy named Carlos pulls you aside after a fight. He's been with you since the beginning, back when it was just one warehouse and 20 drunk guys. He tells you the new locations feel different, corporate, like you're treating people like products instead of warriors. You tell him it's just business scaling up. He doesn't look convinced. Then the violence spills over. Two fighters get into it outside the venue over a girl. One of them pulls a knife. Your security intervenes, but not before blood hits the pavement. The police show up. Suddenly you're explaining why there's an unconscious man bleeding outside your private event space. You pay off the right people. The incident disappears from official records, but it costs you 60 grand and a favor you'll regret later. The IRS starts asking questions. You're depositing too much cash too quickly. Your accountant, a nervous guy named Steven who sweats through his shirts, tells you that you need to legitimize or diversify. You can't just keep shoving duffel bags of 20s into bank accounts. So you start a consulting firm, a security company, a sports management agency. None of them do anything real. They just exist to explain where the money comes from. Your biggest problem isn't the authorities, though. It's the fighters themselves. A new guy shows up at your main location. He calls himself Razor. Stupid name, but he backs it up. He wins 7 fights in a row, each one more brutal than the last. The crowds love him. The bets on his fights triple your usual handle, but Razor wants more. He wants a cut of the betting action. When you refuse, he threatens to walk. You've built your reputation on having the best fighters. Losing him means losing credibility. You negotiate. He gets 5% of bets placed on his fights. It sets a precedent. You know you'll regret, but short-term survival beats long-term strategy. Other fighters start making demands. Better medical care, retirement funds, profit sharing. You're running an underground fight club, and somehow you're dealing with labor disputes. The breaking point comes on a Thursday. Federal agents raid your main location mid-fight. Turns out one of your high rollers was a target in a money laundering investigation. They weren't looking for you specifically. You were just collateral damage. But now they have footage, names, financial records. Your lawyer tells you they're building a racketeering case. You're looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. You have 72 hours before the indictment becomes public. In that time, you liquidate everything. The venues get sold to shell companies. The fighters scatter. Your security team vanishes like they never existed. You take what cash you can carry and disappear. Not to some tropical island, but to a suburb 2 states over. You get a job managing a gym. Legitimate, boring, safe. Sometimes former fighters recognize you. Neither of you acknowledges it. You built an empire in the shadows. Now you're just another guy counting memberships and restocking protein powder. The empire collapsed, but you're still standing. That's the only victory that matters. You built something that shouldn't have existed and watched it consume everything you touched. The fights were never the point. It was always about control, about power. You couldn't get anywhere else. Now that control is gone, and what's left is a quiet life that feels like someone else's. You traded chaos for safety, and some days you're not sure which one was the prison.